Leviticus 11, the Master Engineer's Biological Firewall. Part 1, the menu from Hell's Kitchen. Peace, family. You're tuning in to another episode of Yah First Ministries with Brother Betzadeh Lamed Aleph Lamed, or Betzalel for the new peeps. And if you're here, you already know we don't do Sunday school fluff on this broadcast. We dig deep. We go where these lying-ass preachers are scared to go. Today, we're starting a 5-part journey through Leviticus chapter 11, the dietary laws, clean and unclean, what Yah said you can and cannot put in your body. Now, I already know what you're thinking. Brother, we're about to learn how to eat kosher, right? You gonna tell us pork is bad and catfish is nasty and that's it? Wrong. We're going way deeper than that surface garbage. See, Leviticus 11 is where the serpent seed preachers trap you with half-truths and outright lies. They'll tell you Yah gave you clean animals to eat, like it's a permanent menu plan, like the Most High opened up a divine restaurant and said, order off this side of the menu. But what they won't tell you is that the entire clean-unclean system was part of a shadow, a temporary instructional framework tied to the sacrificial system that is now fulfilled and over. They won't tell you that Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 gave you the original blueprint, a plant-based diet straight from Eden's garden, and that everything that came after was damage control for a broken world post-flood. They won't tell you that your body was engineered to run on plants, not rotting flesh, and that the reason Israel is dying from cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and every plague under the sun is because you're still eating death when the shadow system that justified it has been done for 2,000 years. Over these 5 parts, we're going to break down every single verse of Leviticus 11 in order. No skipping, no rushing, no dancing around the hard parts. Part 1 covers verses 1 through 10. We're laying the foundation here. Yah speaking to Mem, Shin, He, and Aleph, He, Resh, Wa, Nun, establishing the framework for what Israel can and cannot eat among land animals and water creatures. Part 2 digs into the birds and flying things. Part 3 handles the creeping insects and unclean contact laws. Part 4 gets into contamination protocols and what happens when unclean carcasses touch your stuff. And Part 5 closes it out with the full theological weight, why Yah gave these laws, what they mean beyond the surface, and how they connect to your identity as holy people set apart. But here's what makes this different from every other teaching you've heard on Leviticus 11. We're not just listing animals and saying, eat this, don't eat that. We're exposing the engineering underneath. We're breaking down the Paleo-Hebrew pictographs to show you what the words really mean. We're pulling in the sealed scrolls that the enemy buried because they give you the full context these gatekeepers don't want you to have. And we're connecting the shadow system to the substance, showing you that the whole clean-unclean framework was a temporary measure pointing to something greater. And that greater thing has arrived. The final sacrifice came. The shadow is over. And every preacher telling you that you still need to operate under Levitical dietary management is keeping you locked in a system that Yod Hey Wal Shin Ayin fulfilled when he walked the earth. So buckle up. This is not your pastor's dietary law sermon. This is the uncut, uncensored, no holds barred truth about what Yah actually said, what he meant, and what you're supposed to do with it in these last days. Let's get into it. Verses 1 through 2, the divine download begins. And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Right out the gate, Yah is speaking to 2 men, Mem Shin He, Moses, and Aleph He, Resh Wa Nun, Aaron. Not just Mem Shin He, both of them. Why? Because what's about to be delivered is not just prophetic instruction for the camp, it's priestly protocol that ties directly into the sacrificial system Aaron is running. Memshin He is the prophet, the mouthpiece, the lawgiver. Aleph He, Resh Wal Nun, is the high priest, the one who administers the blood, the one standing at the altar, slaughtering lambs and goats and bulls day after day to atone for Israel's sin. These dietary laws are not random food preferences. They are part of the shadow system that Aaron's priesthood operates under. Clean animals are the ones used for sacrifice. Unclean animals are the ones Yah says stay the hell away from because they're poison even in the shadow era. Let's break down the Paleo-Hebrew here. The word for spake traces back to Dalet, Bet, Resh. Dalet, door/pathway, plus Bet, house/tent, plus Resh, head/first. Speaking is opening a pathway from the head of the house. Yah is the head. His word is the door that opens understanding. When Yah speaks, he's not making suggestions. He's issuing commands from the throne room that structure reality itself. The word Moses, Mem, Shin, He, breaks down as Mem, water/chaos, plus Shin, teeth/consume, plus He, behold/window. Mem Shin He is the one who was pulled from the water, the one who consumed Pharaoh's magicians in debate, the one through whom Israel beheld the power of Yad, He, Wah, He. His name is a blueprint of his mission. Aaron, Aleph, He, Resh, Wah, Nun, breaks as Aleph, ox/strength, plus He, behold/window, plus Resh, head/first, plus Wah, nail/connect, plus Nun, seed/continuation. The strength Israel beholds comes through the head who connects the seed to Yah's covenant. Aaron is the mediator through the sacrificial blood. Every letter is engineering data. Now look at who Yah is speaking to through these two men, the children of Israel. Not the Egyptians, not the Canaanites, not the mixed multitude that came up out of Egypt with you. Israel, the covenant seed, the genetic line from Aleph Bet, Resh, He, Mem, Yad, Sat, Ket, Kaf, and Yad, Ayin, Kaf, Bet. These dietary laws are not universal human guidelines for all mankind. They are specific instructions to Yah's covenant people about how to maintain the purity of the vessels he chose to carry his name. The so-called Jews today love to steal these laws and pretend they apply to them, but they are Japhetite, Khazar imposters with zero claim to the covenant. These laws were given to the Negro scattered worldwide, to us, because we are Israel, and our bodies are the temples Yah dwells in. These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Stop right there. Shall eat, not may eat, or it's suggested you eat, or try to eat if you feel like it. Shall. That's a command. But here's what nobody tells you. This command is being given in the context of the shadow system. Yah's about to lay out which animals Israel can consume during the sacrificial age when flesh eating is allowed as part of the atonement ritual. The clean animals listed here are the ones used for sacrifice. You ate the meat from sacrifices because it was part of the process showing you that death is the cost of sin. Every bite reminded you, something had to die because I transgressed. But that shadow system is over now. Yod, He, Wah, Shin, Ayin became the final sacrifice. No more lambs, no more bulls, no more goats. The altar is shut down. The temple is gone. And every preacher telling you that you still need to eat meat from clean animals is keeping you trapped in the shadow that the substance already fulfilled. Cross-reference Genesis chapter 1 verse 29. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. That is the original design. Plant-based, herbs, seeds, fruits, trees. Your body was engineered to run on that fuel. Meat eating did not enter the equation until after the flood, when the earth was devastated and Yah gave a post-flood concession in Genesis chapter 9 verse 3. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. Notice the language, even as the green herb, meaning meat is being added as an option, not replacing the original plant diet. And then Leviticus 11 comes in and says, if you're going to eat meat during this shadow era, here are the rules to keep you from poisoning yourself completely. But the serpent seed preachers don't teach it that way. They rip Leviticus 11 out of context, ignore Genesis chapter 1 verse 29, skip over the shadow substance connection in Colossians chapter 2 verses 16 through 17, and tell you that Yah wants you eating steak and chicken like it's his perfect will. Bullshit. The human digestive system is not designed for meat. You have a long intestinal tract like every other herbivore on this flat earth. 20 plus feet of winding intestine designed to break down fiber and extract nutrients from plants. Carnivores have short digestive tracts, 3 to 6 feet max, so meat passes through fast before it rots. Your meat sits in your gut for days, putrefying, feeding parasites, releasing toxins into your bloodstream, clogging your arteries, inflaming your cells, and programming disease into your temple. Every piece of flesh you eat is a violation of how Yah engineered your body in Eden. Now let's talk about the shadow for a second. What is the shadow? It's a dark outline cast by an object, blocking light. The object is the real thing. The shadow is the temporary image that points to the object, but is not the object itself. Hebrews chapter 10 verse 1 says it plainly. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually make the comers thereunto perfect. The sacrificial system, including the clean animals you ate from sacrifices, was a shadow. It pointed to the real sacrifice that was coming. Yud He Waw Shin Ayin. When the real sacrifice arrived, the shadow ended. You don't keep living in the shadow when the substance is standing right in front of you. That's like staring at a photograph of food while the actual meal is on the table. Eat the meal. Stop staring at the damn picture. Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 through 17 seals it. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Meat eating was a shadow. Paul is telling you straight up, don't let anyone guilt trip you over eating or not eating certain things, because the dietary shadow was pointing to Yad He Waw Shin Ayin, and now that he came, the shadow was lifted. The clean unclean framework served its purpose during the temple age. It's done now. So when you read, these are the beasts which ye shall eat, understand the context. Yah is managing a shadow system. He's saying, during this sacrificial age, while you're still operating under the old covenant and the temple is standing, and Aaron's sons are slaughtering animals daily to atone for your sin, here are the animals you can use. This is damage control, not endorsement. This is temporary instruction for a temporary system. It was never meant to be your permanent diet. Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 was always the blueprint, and Yud He Waw Shin Ayin sacrifice restored access to that original design. Now let's get into the engineering principle underneath this verse. Yah is establishing categories. He's creating a classification system for living creatures. Why? Because organization is the fundamental principle of engineering. You cannot build, maintain, or optimize any complex system without categorization. Look at any database, any file system, any code repository. Everything is sorted into categories, folders, classes, types. Yah is doing the same thing here. He's saying, among all the beasts on the earth, which is a huge data set, I am defining criteria that will sort them into two categories, clean and unclean. This is not arbitrary. This is not random. This is the master engineer writing a sorting algorithm for biological organisms based on their function, their design, and their compatibility with the Israelite body during the shadow era. Think about it like this. Your smartphone has an operating system, iOS, Android, whatever. That OS is designed to run certain types of apps. If you try to install a Windows.exe file on an iPhone, it won't work. Why? Because the file format is incompatible with the system architecture. The phone's hardware and software were engineered to process specific inputs. Anything outside that specification causes errors, crashes, system corruption. Your body is the same way. Yah designed your digestive system, your cellular structure, your metabolic pathways to process specific inputs. The plant-based fuel he gave you in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. Meat is an incompatible file format. Your system tries to process it, but it causes errors, inflammation, toxicity, disease, cellular breakdown, system crashes, heart attacks, strokes, organ failure. The clean-unclean categories in Leviticus 11 were Yah's way of saying, if you're going to run incompatible files during the shadow era, at least stick to the ones that cause the least system damage. But the optimal solution? Stop running incompatible files. Go back to the original OS design. Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 is your factory reset. Verse 3, the classification algorithm. Whatsoever part of the hoof and is cloven-footed and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat. Here's the algorithm. Yah just gave you the sorting criteria for clean land animals. 3 conditions must be true for the animal to pass the test. 1, parteth the hoof, split hoof. 2, is cloven-footed, fully divided hoof. 3, cheweth the cud, ruminant digestive system. All 3 must be present. If even one condition is false, the animal is unclean, and you do not eat it during the shadow era. This is Boolean logic. True and true and true equals clean. Anything else equals unclean. Yah is writing an if statement in biological taxonomy. Let's break the Paleo-Hebrew. Hoof traces to Peh, Resh, Samek. Peh plus Resh plus Samek. The hoof is the opening at the base of the leg, the first point of contact with the ground, the support structure. A split hoof means the foundation is divided. Why does that matter? Because it creates stability and traction. Animals with split hooves can navigate rough terrain without slipping. They're built for sure-footedness. Symbolically, this represents a creature that is grounded, stable, not easily shaken. Clean animals walk with divided support. They're balanced, not lurching around on a single point. They've got structural redundancy built into their locomotion. Cloven-footed is the same principle amplified. The hoof is not just split at the surface, but fully divided all the way to the base. It's a complete separation, not a partial crack. Engineering-wise, this is about load distribution. A fully cloven hoof spreads the animal's weight across 2 distinct support points instead of concentrating it on one. This reduces ground pressure per square inch, prevents the animal from sinking into soft ground, and allows it to move efficiently across varied terrain. Yah is saying the clean animal has a well-engineered foundation. Its structural design is sound. It's not wobbling around on a single peg like some janky prototype. Now, chew as the cud. This is the digestive specification. Cud chewing animals are ruminants. They have a 4-chamber stomach: rumen, reticulum, omasum, abomasum. They swallow food into the first chamber, let it ferment with bacteria, then regurgitate it back into the mouth to chew it again, breaking it down further before it moves to the next chamber. This process happens multiple times. Why? Because ruminants eat grass and plant cellulose is hard to break down. The 4-chamber system with rechewing is the maximally efficient digestion method for extracting nutrients from fibrous plant material. Here's the key. Ruminants are herbivores. They eat grass. They eat plants. They do not eat meat. They do not scavenge carrion. They do not consume blood or rotting flesh. Their entire digestive system is engineered for plant-based fuel. The bacteria in their rumen are specialized for fermenting cellulose. They cannot process meat. If a cow tried to eat meat, it would make the animal sick. The system is not designed for it. So let's connect the dots. Yah is saying, during the shadow era, when you're eating sacrificial animals, the clean ones are the ones that eat plants. Herbivores only. Why? Because what an animal eats affects the composition of its flesh. Herbivores that graze on grass have cleaner tissue, fewer accumulated toxins, less concentrated waste in their muscle fibers. They're eating first-generation food, direct from the earth. Carnivores and scavengers eat second-generation and third-generation food. They're consuming animals that consumed animals, which means concentrated toxins building up the food chain. Every predator's body is a toxic waste dump compared to a grazing herbivore. Even in the shadow era, Yah is minimizing harm. He's saying, if you insist on eating flesh while the sacrificial system is running, at least eat the animals that are the least toxic, the ones with clean digestive systems, the ones that eat what I originally gave you to eat, plants. The ruminant digestive system is actually a mirror of what your system is supposed to do: process plant material efficiently, extract maximum nutrition, eliminate waste cleanly. The cow's 4-chamber stomach is doing what your 20-foot intestinal tract is designed to do: break down fiber, not rot meat. Now let's talk about modern tech comparison. The split hoof with load distribution, that's like dual core processing in the CPU. Instead of running everything through one core that gets overheated and bottlenecked, you split the workload across 2 cores, so the system runs cooler, faster, more stable. The cloven hoof is redundancy engineering. If one side fails, the other can still bear weight. Same principle as raised storage arrays in data centers. You mirror the data across multiple drives, so if one crashes, you don't lose everything. The split hoof is fail-safe design built into the animal's locomotion. The cud-chewing ruminant system, that's iterative processing. The animal is running the same input through multiple passes to extract maximum value. That is exactly how machine learning algorithms work. You feed the data through the neural network, measure the output, adjust the weights, then feed it through again, repeating until you optimize accuracy. The cow is doing multi-pass data extraction on grass to pull out every nutrient. It's the biological equivalent of a compiler running optimization passes on source code to generate the most efficient machine instructions. And here's the kicker. The 4-chamber stomach with specialized bacteria, that is a biological microservices architecture. Each chamber has a distinct function. The rumen is the fermentation engine. The reticulum is the filter, catching large particles. The omasum is the nutrient absorber. The abomasum is the acid digester. 4 separate modules working in sequence to process input into output. That is how modern distributed systems are built. You break the workload into specialized services that each handle one part of the pipeline. The ruminant digestive system is a proof of concept that Yah engineered living organisms using the same architectural principles that software engineers discovered thousands of years later. So when Yah says, whatsoever parteth the hoof and cheweth the cud, he's not just listing random animal traits. He's defining a biological specification that reflects sound engineering, efficient design, and minimal toxicity. Even in the shadow era, even when allowing flesh consumption as part of the temporary atonement system, Yah is pointing you toward the cleanest possible option. But make no mistake, the cleanest flesh is still filthy compared to the plant-based design he gave you in the beginning. Cross-reference this with Deuteronomy chapter 14, verses 4 through 6, where Yah repeats the same classification. These are the beasts which ye shall eat, the ox, the sheep, and the goat, the hart, and the roebuck, and the fallow deer, and the wild goat, and the pygarg, and the wild ox, and the chamois, and every beast that parteth the hoof, and cleaveth the cleft into two claws, and cheweth the cud among the beasts that ye shall eat. Same algorithm, same criteria. Yah is consistent because he is not making this up as he goes. He is revealing a pre-existing design specification written into the biological architecture of creation. But here is what you need to understand about this specification. It is a temporary workaround, not the permanent solution. Yah is saying, while the shadow system is operational, here is how you minimize harm. But the shadow is over. The temple is gone. The sacrificial system is fulfilled. You are no longer under the protocol that required eating sacrificial meat. The algorithm served its purpose and is now the prefective. Stop running deprecated code. Ginger. The prophetic and theological weight of this verse is massive. The split hoof represents discernment, the ability to walk carefully, test the ground, divide truth from lies. Israel is supposed to be a people with cloven understanding, not running wild on unstable footing. The cud chewing represents meditation. You take in the word, chew it, swallow it, bring it back up, chew it again. Extract every ounce of nutrition from what Yah said. You do not skim scripture. You do not speed read the Torah. You ruminate on it. You process it through multiple passes until it becomes part of your system. That is how you extract the deep meat of the word. But the false teaching that Leviticus 11 promotes is that Yah wants you eating these animals forever. No, he was defining the least harmful options during a temporary system. The substance has come. The shadow is lifted. You are now free to return to Genesis chapter 1, verse 29, the plant-based blueprint that never changed, never expired, and never needed a sacrifice to access. Any preacher telling you that you must eat beef or lamb or goat to be righteous is preaching a lie. Any camp condemning veganism as weakness or compromise is ignorant of the full counsel of Yah. The original design was vegan. The restoration includes returning to the original design. Your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19. And you cannot glorify Yah in your body while filling it with death. One more thread to pull. Notice Yah does not say, eat whatever you want, as long as it has a split hoof and chews cud. He says, among the beasts, that shall ye eat. Meaning, among all the beasts on earth, only the ones meeting this specification are acceptable during the shadow period. Everything else is off the table. Yah is restricting your options, not expanding them. He is drawing boundaries to protect you from the worst poisons, even while allowing limited flesh consumption. But the preachers today flip it and act like Leviticus 11 is giving you permission to feast on animal flesh forever. That is a perversion of the text. Leviticus 11 is damage control for a shadow era, not an eternal endorsement of carnivore living. In part 2, we are going deeper into the exceptions, the animals that look like they meet the criteria but don't, and why Yah calls them out specifically. We are going to expose the biological traps built into certain animals that fool people into thinking they are clean when they are actually toxic. And we are going to show you how the enemy uses these verses to keep Israel sick, weak, and dying while they profit off your ignorance. Part 2, the biological exception handler. Now we dig into the exceptions, the animals that look like they should be clean but fail the algorithm on one critical condition. Verses 4 through 8, when the code throws an error. Nevertheless, these shall you not eat, of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof. He is unclean unto you. Here's where Yah debugs the false positives. The camel looks like it should pass. It chews the cud, it's a herbivore, it eats plants just like the clean animals, but it fails on the hoof test. The camel does not have a fully split hoof. It has a padded foot with 2 toes, but they're connected by a web of tissue. The division is not complete. It's a partial split, not a full cloven hoof. Why does that matter? Because the camel is built for sand, not stable ground. The padded foot with the webbing spreads its weight across loose terrain so it doesn't sink. That's brilliant desert engineering, but it's not the same structural redundancy as a true split hoof. The camel's foundation is adaptive to unstable ground. It's designed to navigate shifting conditions. Symbolically, this represents something that looks solid, but is actually built to compromise, to adapt to whatever terrain it's on, to shift with the environment instead of standing firm. Let's break the Paleo-Hebrew for camel. Gimel, Mem, Lamed. Gimel, foot/gather, plus Mem, water/chaos, plus Lamed, shepherd staff/authority. The camel gathers and carries through chaotic conditions under human authority. It's a beast of burden built for harsh environments. But here's the key. It serves man's purposes, not Yah's design for clean sacrifice. The camel is a utility animal, not a covenant offering. Even in the shadow era, Yah is saying, this one does not belong on the altar. Its flesh is not for you. And think about what camels do. They store water in their humps. They can go days without drinking. They survive in conditions where clean animals would die. That's because they're engineered for scarcity and survival, not abundance and covenant living. The camel represents the flesh trying to make it through the wilderness on its own reserves instead of depending on Yah's daily provision. It's self-sufficient. It's adapted to lack. And that is not the spirit of Israel. Cross-reference this with the rich young ruler in Matthew chapter 19. Yad He Wa Shin Ayin told him it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom. Why a camel? Because the camel represents self-reliance, earthly wealth, the flesh trusting in its own reserves instead of depending on the Father. The rich man is spiritually unclean. He's got the appearance of righteousness, keeps the commandments, but he fails the test when it comes to letting go of his own resources and trusting Yah completely. Same pattern. Looks clean on the surface, fails under inspection. Now let's talk modern tech. The camel's padded foot is like a soft fail system. It adapts to errors instead of crashing. In software engineering, you can write code that detects an error and just keeps running with a workaround instead of stopping. That sounds good, but it's actually dangerous because you're masking the real problem. The system keeps operating even though something is broken underneath. The camel's foot is the same. It keeps moving across unstable ground by adapting, but it never fixes the ground. It just learns to live with instability. That's the flesh, always finding a workaround, always adapting to sin, never actually repenting and getting on solid ground. Clean animals with true split hooves, they're like hard fail systems. If the ground is bad, they stop. They won't move on unstable terrain. They force you to fix the foundation before proceeding. That's the spirit. It will not compromise. It will not adapt to sin. It demands solid ground, or it shuts the whole operation down. What does this mean for Israel today? Stop trying to adapt the Babylon system. Stop finding workarounds to live comfortably in Egypt. Stop self-filling your way through life by compromising a little here, adjusting a little there, making peace with the world's instability. The camel mentality is unclean. You are supposed to have a cloven foundation that refuses to move on bad ground. If the terrain is wicked, you don't adapt. You rebuild the terrain, or you stay put until Yah moves you. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. The coney, also called the rock badger or hyrax. This little bastard looks like it chews cud. It sits there moving its jaw like a ruminant, but it is not a true cud chewer. It does not have a 4-chamber stomach. It's a pseudo-ruminant. It mimics the behavior without having the actual internal architecture. The coney is a faker. It's doing external religious motions without the internal transformation that makes them real. Let's break coney in Paleo Hebrew. Shin, Pe, Nun. Shin plus Pe plus Nun. The coney speaks and consumes to continue its existence. It survives by appearing to be something it is not. It lives in the rocks, in high places, in cracks and crevices where predators can't reach it. It's a survivor, but not through strength, through deception and hiding. Sound familiar? This is the false prophet. This is the hypocrite in the congregation. This is the preacher who stands behind the pulpit making all the right jaw movements, quoting scripture, saying, "Thus saith the Lord," looking righteous, but his internal system is all wrong. He doesn't have the 4-chamber process of meditating on the word, bringing it back up, chewing it again, extracting every nutrient. He's just performing. He learned emotions. He saw what a real teacher does and he mimics it, but there's no transformation happening inside. The coney has no split hoof either. It's got little padded feet like a rodent. No structural division. No grounded stability. This animal is built to run and hide, not to stand firm. When danger comes, the coney doesn't fight. It flees to the rocks and hides in a crack. That's the false teacher when the heat comes, when persecution hits, when the truth gets too uncomfortable, when standing firm costs something. He runs. He hides behind excuses, behind church doctrine, behind, "I'm just doing what the denomination says." He won't plant his feet and defend the truth because he doesn't have a split foundation. He's spiritually unclean. Proverbs chapter 30, verses 24 through 28, lists 4 things that are exceeding wise, and the coney is one of them. The conies are but a feeble folk, yet make they their houses in the rocks. The world looks at the coney and says, "Look how wise. It survives by hiding in high places where nobody can touch it." But Yah says in Leviticus 11 that wisdom is unclean. That survival strategy is not the Israel model. You do not build your house in the rocks by hiding from predators. You build your house on the rock, Yod He Wah Shin Ayin, and you stand there even when hell comes for you. The coney's wisdom is the wisdom of the flesh. It's cowardice dressed up as strategy. Modern tech comparison, the coney is like vaporware, software that gets announced, demonstrated, hyped up, but never actually ships because the internal code doesn't exist. It's all marketing, all show. The demo looks great. The promotional material is slick. The spokesperson talks a good game, but when you try to actually use the product, there's nothing there. The internal architecture was never built. That's every false prophet who preaches a good sermon but has no substance when you examine his life, his doctrine, his fruit. He's running on borrowed scripts, recycled sermons, stolen revelation. There's no real processing happening inside. What does this mean for you? Stop mimicking righteousness. Stop going through religious motions because that's what you saw someone else do. Stop hiding behind church membership, behind I'm in account, behind external affiliation with truth, while your internal system is still running on flesh. Yah doesn't want you looking like you chew the cud. He wants you actually chewing it. Meditate on the word until it becomes part of your cellular structure. Process it through multiple passes until you extract every nutrient. And stop hiding in the rocks when pressure comes. Plant your feet on the truth and stand there, even if it costs you everything. And the hair, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. Same damn pattern. The hair looks like it chews cud, sits there moving its jaw, appears to be ruminating, but it is not a true ruminant. It practices psychotrophy. It eats its own feces to extract additional nutrients on the second pass. That is not the same as the four-chambered cud chewing system. It's a shortcut. It's processing waste instead of properly breaking down the original food. The hair has no split hoof. It's got little paws, no structural division, no load distribution, no redundancy. And here's the kicker about hairs. They're fast. They're built for speed, not stability. When danger comes, the hair runs. It's one of the fastest land animals relative to its size. That speed is its defense. But speed without direction is just panic. The hair runs in zigzags, changes direction constantly, never commits to a path. It survives by being unpredictable and unstable. Symbolically, the hair represents the person who is always moving, but never grounded. Always jumping from one teaching to another, one camp to another, one doctrine to another. He's fast. He picks up new information quickly, processes it quickly, moves on quickly, but he's got no foundation. He's not planted anywhere. He doesn't commit to the truth long enough to let it transform him. He's consuming the waste of other teachers instead of going directly to the source and doing the hard work of ruminating on Torah himself. Let's break hair in Paleo Hebrew. Aleph, Resh, Nun, Bet, Ta. Aleph plus Resh plus Nun plus Bet plus Ta. The hair's name shows it should have strength at the head, continuing into the house bearing the covenant mark, but it doesn't. It's a name that promises one thing and delivers another. It's false advertising. The hair looks like it should be clean, but the internal reality does not match the external presentation. Cross-reference this with the book of James, chapter 1, verse 8. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That's the hair, double-minded, running in zigzags, never committing, never planting, always moving, but never arriving. The hair mentality is the person who says, I believe on Sunday, and lives like the heathen on Monday. He's in the truth one week, out of it the next. He gets convicted, makes a commitment, then runs back to the world when the pressure builds. He's spiritually unclean because there's no stability, no foundation, no commitment to stand on truth regardless of cost. Modern tech comparison, the hair is like a system running in constant reboot mode. It never stays up long enough to actually complete a task. It processes a little bit of data, crashes, reboots, processes a little more, crashes again. The system is busy. The CPU usage is high. The disk is spinning. There's activity, but nothing actually gets accomplished because the system never stabilizes long enough to finish the job. That's the unstable believer who is always seeking truth, but never landing on it. Always studying, but never coming to the knowledge of the truth. Always moving, but never building. What does this mean for you? Stop running. Stop jumping from teacher to teacher looking for the next hit of revelation. Stop zigzagging through doctrines like you dodging sniper fire. Plant your feet on the foundational truth of Torah and stay there. Let the word process through multiple passes until it transforms you from the inside out. Stop eating the waste of secondhand teaching and go directly to the source, Scripture itself, the Paleo-Hebrew roots, the original blueprint. And stop being double-minded. Make a commitment to Yah and His law and stand on it, even when hell breaks loose. The hell survives by running. Israel conquers by standing firm. And the swine, though he divide the hoof and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud. He is unclean to you. Here's the big one, the pig, the swine, the most notorious unclean animal in all of Scripture. And here's what most people miss. The pig passes the hoof test. It has a fully split hoof, cloven all the way down. Structurally, the pig's foundation looks solid, but it fails on the digestive test. It does not chew the cud. It is not a ruminant. It does not have a 4-chamber stomach. The pig is an omnivore. It eats everything. Plants, meat, garbage, feces, carrion, its own offspring if it's hungry enough. The pig has no filter. It consumes without discernment. Let's break swine in Paleo-Hebrew. Chet, Zayin, Yud, Resh. Chet plus Zayin plus Yud plus Resh. The pig is separated by a weapon of work at the head, meaning it looks like it should be divided and set apart, but it's actually cut off from the clean category by what it does. Its behavior disqualifies it despite its appearance. The pig's digestive system is fast. Food moves through a pig in 4 to 6 hours. Compare that to a cow, where food takes days to fully process through all 4 stomach chambers. The pig does not meditate. It does not ruminate. It consumes and expels. It takes in information and shits it out without extracting the deep nutrients. This is the person who looks like he's got a solid foundation. He can quote scripture. He knows the commandments. He shows up to Sabbath, but he has no discernment. He consumes everything. He'll listen to a Torah teacher one day and a prosperity gospel pimp the next. He'll read the Bible and then turn around and watch the filthiest garbage Hollywood puts out. He has no filter. He doesn't process what comes in. He doesn't meditate on the word and separate truth from lies. Everything just flows through him and nothing transforms him. And here's the nastiest part. Pigs are scavengers. They eat death. They eat waste. They eat corruption. A pig will eat a dead body. A pig will eat its own feces. A pig will eat anything rotting and foul and disgusting. And all of that goes into its flesh. When you eat pork, you are consuming an animal that has consumed death and decay. You are eating an animal that is a biological waste processor. Even in the shadow era, when flesh eating was allowed, Yah said, "Do not eat this one. This one is too toxic. This one is too filthy. This one will poison you." Modern science confirms this. Pork carries more parasites, more diseases, more concentrated toxins than any other commonly consumed meat. Trichinosis, tapeworms, hepatitis E, MRSA, influenza. The pig is a disease vector. Its flesh is contaminated at a cellular level because of what it eats. You cannot clean a pig by cooking it. You cannot purify its meat by following kosher slaughter protocols. The pig's nature makes it unclean. What it consumes becomes part of its tissue. And when you consume the pig, you consume everything the pig consumed. You are eating death and calling it food. Cross-reference, 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 22. The dog has turned to his own vomit again, and the sow that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. Peter is comparing false believers to pigs. You can wash a pig. You can clean it up externally. But the moment you let it go, it runs back to the mud, back to the filth, back to the mire. Why? Because that is its nature. The pig is not transformed by being washed. It just gets dirty again. That is the false convert. That is the person who gets emotional at a revival, makes a confession, gets baptized, looks clean for a minute, then goes right back to the same sin, the same lies, the same filth, because his internal nature never changed. He's still a pig. He's still unclean at the core. And let's talk about the PG in modern culture. The serpent seed pushes pork on Israel harder than any other unclean meat. Bacon, ham, sausage, ribs, it is everywhere. They market it as comfort food, as tradition, as soul food. They wrapped our identity as a people around eating the most toxic flesh Yah forbade. Why? Because they know it destroys your body. They know it fills you with parasites and disease. They know it shortens your lifespan and keeps you sick, weak, and dependent on their pharmaceutical system. Pork is a weapon they use against Israel. Every time you eat it, you are poisoning your own temple and funding the industry that oppresses you. Modern tech comparison, the pig is like a system with no firewall. It accepts all incoming traffic. Malicious code, spam, viruses, Trojans, everything gets through because there is no filter, no inspection, no discernment protocol. The system just processes whatever comes in and gets infected as a result. That is the undiscerning mind that consumes media, music, doctrine, philosophy without testing it against Torah. Everything flows in, nothing gets blocked, and the system becomes corrupted from the inside out. What does this mean for you? Stop eating pork immediately. Not because the shadow system is still in effect. It is not. But because pork is poison regardless of what era you are in. It was toxic in the shadow era, and it is still toxic now. Your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and you cannot fill it with the flesh of a biological waste processor and expect to glorify Yah in your body. Cut it off. And more importantly, develop discernment. Stop consuming everything that gets put in front of you. Filter what comes into your mind, your eyes, your ears. Meditate on the word like a ruminant. Process it through multiple passes until you extract every nutrient and separate truth from contamination. Do not be like the pig that eats everything and meditates on nothing. Of their flesh shall you not eat, and their carcass shall you not touch. They are unclean to you. This is the command, not a suggestion, not advice, a direct command from Yah to Israel. Do not eat the flesh of unclean animals. Do not even touch their dead bodies. Why? Because uncleanness is contagious. It transfers. When you come into contact with death and decay, it defiles you. Even if you did not eat it, just touching it makes you ceremonially unclean until evening. The Paleo-Hebrew for touch is nun gimel ayin. Nun plus gimel plus ayin. To touch is to bring the seed into gathering where it can be seen. Contact creates connection. What you touch, you connect to. What you connect to, you become influenced by. Yah is saying, do not even create the connection. Do not open the door. Do not give uncleanness a foothold in your life. Now here's where the religious folks twist this. They act like touching a pig makes you sinful. Like if you accidentally brush against pork in the grocery store, you just violated Torah and need to repent. That is bullshit. This command was given in the context of the shadow era, when Israel was living under ceremonial purity laws tied to the sacrificial system. If you touched an unclean carcass, you were ceremonially unclean until evening, meaning you could not approach the tabernacle, could not participate in worship, had to wash and wait. It was a temporary contamination, not a moral sin. But the principle underneath is still valid. What you connect to influences you. If you spend your time around people who eat unclean, think unclean, live unclean, that uncleanness will rub off on you. If you consume media that glorifies sin, that normalizes abomination, that celebrates what Yah calls filth, you will become defiled by it, even if you are not directly participating. Uncleanness transfers through contact. Cross-reference 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. Be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners. Communication is contact. Conversation is touch. Who you talk to, who you listen to, who you spend time with, that touches you. And if they are unclean, that uncleanness will contaminate you. You cannot hang around pigs and stay clean. You cannot touch death and stay pure. Separate yourself. What does this mean for Israel today? Stop making excuses for keeping unclean relationships, unclean habits, unclean entertainment in your life. It's just a TV show. It's just music. They're my friends, even if they don't believe. No, that is contact with uncleanness, and it is defiling you whether you feel it or not. Cut the connection. Wash yourself. Separate from everything Yah calls unclean and stay separated. The command is not ceremonial anymore, but the principle is eternal. Guard what you touch. Guard what touches you. Verses 9 through 10, the water dwellers algorithm. These shall ye eat of all that are in the waters. Whatsoever have fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. Now Yah shifts to aquatic creatures. New category, new algorithm. For water dwellers to be clean during the shadow era, they must have two features, fins and scales. Both. Not one or the other. Both. The fins allow the creature to navigate, to move deliberately through the water, to steer, to control its direction. The scales provide protection, an armored covering that shields the creature from external contamination. Let's break fins in Paleo Hebrew. Semek Nun, Pei, Yud, Resh. Semek, support/thorn, plus Nun, seed/continue, plus Pei, mouth/speak, plus Yud, hand/work, plus Resh, head/first. Fins support the seed's continuation through the work of the head. They are the propulsion system. They are what allows the creature to move with purpose instead of just drifting with the current. Scales in Paleo Hebrew, Kaf, Semek, Kaf, Shin, Ta. Kaf, back of head/behind, plus Semek, support/thorn, plus Kaf, behind, plus Shin, teeth/consume, plus Ta, mark/covenant. Scales, support from behind and protect from being consumed. They are armor. They are a defensive layer that prevents penetration from outside threats. So what is Yah saying? Clean fish have direction and protection. They can navigate life deliberately, and they have a covering that shields them from contamination. Symbolically, this is Israel. You are supposed to have fins, the ability to move through the world with purpose and direction according to Torah, not just drifting with whatever current the culture creates. And you are supposed to have scales, the armor of Yah's commandments protecting you from the filth and contamination of Babylon. Unclean water creatures are the opposite. Catfish, eels, sharks, no scales. Shellfish, crabs, lobsters, shrimp, no fins and no scales. These creatures either drift along the bottom feeding on waste, catfish, crabs, lobsters, or they are predators without protection, sharks, eels. The bottom feeders are scavengers. They eat dead matter, decaying organic waste, feces, anything that sinks to the bottom. They are the cleanup crew of the water. And Yah says, do not eat the cleanup crew. Do not consume creatures whose entire diet is death and decay. Modern tech comparison, fins are like a guidance system, GPS, autopilot, navigation software that allows a vehicle to move toward a destination instead of just floating wherever the wind or current takes it. Scales are like encryption and firewalls, layers of protection that prevent external threats from penetrating and corrupting the system. A clean fish is like a secure, directed system. An unclean water creature is like a device with no firewall, drifting on an open network. It is going to get infected. It is going to consume malware, and it is going to become a contaminated system that spreads the infection to anything that consumes it. What does this mean for you? Develop direction. Stop drifting through life reacting to whatever the world throws at you. Move with purpose, according to the commandments, and build your defenses. Put on the armor of Torah. Let Yah's law be the scales that protect you from the contamination of this wicked generation. Do not be a bottom feeder, consuming the waste of Babylon's culture. Do not be a predator without protection, attacking everything around you with no covering. Be a clean fish, directed, protected, moving through the waters of life with purpose and armor. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you. Notice the language escalates. Yah did not say unclean animals are an abomination. He said they are unclean. But water creatures without fins and scales, abomination. That is a stronger word. That is a deeper level of contamination. Why? Because water represents chaos in Scripture. The waters are where the nations dwell. Revelation 17 verse 15. Water is the mass of humanity, unstable, shifting, unpredictable. Creatures that live in water and have no direction, no protection. These represent people who are fully immersed in the chaos of the world system, with zero ability to navigate out and zero defense against contamination. They are not just unclean, they are abominable. They are the worst of the worst. Shellfish, crustaceans, mollusks, these are the scum of the water. They crawl on the bottom. They eat filth. They filter waste. A clam or oyster literally filters sewage water and concentrates toxins in its tissue. When you eat shellfish, you are eating a creature whose entire biological purpose is to consume and concentrate contamination. That is why Yah calls it an abomination. It is the lowest form of aquatic life, and consuming it is consuming concentrated filth. Let's talk about shellfish allergies. More people are allergic to shellfish than any other food category. Why? Because the human body recognizes shellfish as toxic and rejects it with an immune response. Your body is trying to tell you, this is poison, do not consume it. But people override that natural defense and eat it anyway because it tastes good. You are ignoring your body's warning system and consuming what Yah called an abomination because your flesh wants it. What does this mean for you today? Understand that the abomination is not just about the animal. It is about what that animal represents. Bottom dwelling, waste filtering, directionless, defenseless existence. That is the abomination. That is Babylon. That is the world system. And Yah is saying, do not participate in it. Do not consume it. Do not become like it. Come up out of the chaos. Develop fins, direction according to Torah. Develop scales, protection through obedience. And stop feeding on the waste of a dying system. In part 3, we are getting into the birds, the creatures of the air, and why every single one that Yah lists as unclean is either a predator or a scavenger. The pattern is going to blow your mind. Part 3, when the sky becomes a kill list. The pattern tightens. Every bird Yah names as unclean shares one defining trait. Verses 11 through 12. Triple emphasis on abomination. They shall be even an abomination unto you. You shall not eat of their flesh, but you shall have their carcasses in abomination. Yah just said this in verse 10. Now he's saying it again in verse 11. Why? because repetition in scripture is emphasis. When the Most High repeats himself, he's making damn sure you don't miss it. The water creatures without fins and scales aren't just unclean, they are abominations. 3 times Yah uses that word in 3 verses. Abomination, abomination, abomination. That's a threat level classification. The Paleo Hebrew for abomination is Shin Kaf Sadeh. Shin, teeth/consume/destroy, plus Kaf, back of head/behind/horizon, plus Sadeh, righteous/fish hook. An abomination is something that consumes from behind what should be righteous. It's a corruption of what Yah designed as good. These creatures aren't just biologically incompatible with your system. They represent spiritual defilement at the deepest level. And notice, Yah says, ye shall have their carcasses in abomination. Not just don't eat them, hold their dead bodies in abomination. Treat them like the contaminated biological waste they are. This isn't about being squeamish. This is about recognizing that certain creatures are so toxic, so polluted by what they consume and where they live, that even their corpses are hazardous material. A dead shellfish on the beach, that's a biohazard. A rotting catfish, contaminated waste. Yah is teaching Israel to see these creatures the way he sees them, as concentrators of filth that have no place in your diet or your camp. Cross-reference this with Deuteronomy chapter 14 verse 3, where Yah says, thou shalt not eat any abominable thing. Any. That means if Yah calls it an abomination, it is off the table permanently. Not cook it well and it's fine, not pray over it and it's blessed, not the New Testament frees you to eat whatever. No, an abomination is an abomination is an abomination. The category doesn't change just because the shadow system ended. Shellfish were poisonous in the shadow era, and they're still poisonous now. The biological reality didn't shift when Yad Hewashin Ayin walked the earth. Your body is still not designed to process bottom-feeding scavengers that filter sewage. What does this mean for you? Stop making excuses. But I love shrimp. But crab legs taste good. But lobster is a delicacy. Yeah, and poison can taste good too if you season it right. Doesn't mean you should eat it. The flesh wants what it wants, but your spirit knows better. If Yah calls it an abomination, you treat it like an abomination. Period. No debate, no negotiation. You don't get to vote on what's clean and what's not. Yah already classified it. Your job is to obey. Whatsoever hath no fins nor scales in the waters, that shall be an abomination unto you. 3rd time, same message, same classification. Yah is drilling this into your head because he knows the flesh is stubborn. He knows you're going to be tempted. He knows the serpent seed food industry is going to market shellfish as luxury, as sophistication, as fine dining. So he repeats it again to remove all ambiguity. No fins, no scales, abomination. End of discussion. The engineer principle here is boundary definition. In any secure system, you define the boundaries clearly and you enforce them consistently. Y'all just drew a line in the water, literally. On one side, creatures with fins and scales. On the other side, everything else. The line is binary. There's no gray area. There's no, well, it's close enough. Either the creature has both features or it's in the abomination category. That's how you write secure code. Clear conditionals, strict type checking, zero tolerance for edge cases that don't meet specification. Modern tech comparison, this is like input validation in a web application. If a user submits data that doesn't match the expected format, the system rejects it. You don't try to make it work. You don't massage the bad input into something acceptable. You throw an error and shut it down. Why? Because accepting malformed input is how systems get hacked. One bad input can compromise the entire database. The same principle applies to your body. Accepting unclean food, food that doesn't meet Yah's specification, is how your biological system gets compromised. Disease enters, parasites multiply, inflammation spreads, your immune system crashes, all because you accepted input that failed the validation check. And let's talk about the symbolic layer. Water creatures without fins and scales represent people who live in the world. Water equals chaos of nations, but have no direction, fins, and no protection, scales. They're fully immersed in Babylon's system, with no ability to navigate out and no defense against the filth. That's the abomination. Not that they're in the water, but that they have no way to move through it with purpose or shield themselves from its corruption. They're just drifting, absorbing, filtering, consuming whatever the current brings. That's spiritual death. That's why Yah calls it an abomination. It's the picture of a soul that has no covenant covering, no Torah guidance, no protection from the enemy, just raw exposure to every toxic current in the world system until they're saturated with it. What does this mean for Israel? You can be in the world, you have to be. You're scattered among the nations, but you better have fins and scales. You better have direction according to the commandments and protection through obedience. You better be navigating Babylon with purpose, not just drifting wherever the culture takes you. And you better have armor, the word of Yah covering you, shielding you from the contamination all around. If you lose your fins, you lose direction and you start drifting. If you lose your scales, you lose protection and the filth starts seeping in. Both together, that's when you become the abomination. That's when you're no different than the heathen around you. And that's when Yah says, I don't even recognize you anymore. Verses 13 through 19, the predator protocol. And these are they which ye shall have an abomination among the fowls. They shall not be eaten. They are an abomination. The eagle and the ossifrage and the osprey. Now Yah shift the birds. New category, new algorithm. But here's what's gonna blow your mind. Every single bird that Yah lists as unclean is either a predator or a scavenger. Not one herbivore in the bunch, not one seed eater, not one grain feeder. Every damn one of them eats meat, eats carrion, or eats blood. The pattern is absolute. Start with the eagle, majestic bird, right? Symbol of power, strength, vision. The serpent seed even put it on their money, their flags, their government seals. But Yah says, abomination. Why? Because the eagle is a predator. It hunts living prey. It kills with its talons. It rips flesh with its beak. It feeds on blood. The eagle is a carnivore, and carnivores accumulate toxins at exponentially higher rates than herbivores because they're eating animals that already concentrated environmental poisons in their flesh. You're now at the top of the food chain, consuming third generation and fourth generation toxicity. Every bite is layered poison. The Paleo Hebrew for eagle is Nun Shin Resh. Nun plus Shin plus Resh. The eagle continues to consume as the head. It's the apex predator in its domain. It sits at the top of the hierarchy, feeding on everything below it. Symbolically, this represents the flesh nature that seeks dominion through consuming others. It's the predatory spirit that builds power by devouring the weak. That is not Israel's calling. Israel is called to be the sheep, not the eagle, the lamb, not the lion. We conquer through sacrifice, not predation. The ossifrage, that's the bearded vulture, or lammergeier. This bastard doesn't just eat dead animals, it eats bones. It drops bones from great heights to crack them open, then feeds on the marrow inside. It's a scavenger that specializes in extracting the last remnants of nutrition from carcasses that even other scavengers have already picked clean. If that's not a picture of feeding on death, I don't know what is. The osprey, that's the osprey, the fish hawk. It dives into water and snatches fish with its talons. Another predator, another carnivore, another creature whose entire diet is flesh. Notice the pattern yet? Yah's building a list of creatures that kill or scavenge. That's the unifying thread. If the bird is a hunter or a corpse eater, it's unclean. Why? Because what you eat becomes part of your tissue. A bird that eats death becomes saturated with death. And when you eat that bird, you consume concentrated death. You're eating an animal that ate animals that ate animals. The toxicity compounds at every level. Modern tech comparison, this is like a virus spreading through a network. The first infected machine passes the malware to a second machine, which passes it to a third, which passes it to a fourth. By the time you're at the fourth machine, the payload is amplified. The damage is exponential. That's what happens when you eat carnivores. You're consuming exponentially amplified toxins that built up through multiple generations of the food chain. Your body becomes the final dumping ground for every pesticide, heavy metal, industrial waste, and biological contaminant that accumulated in every animal down the line. And the vulture and the kite after his kind. Vulture, the poster child of scavengers. This bird doesn't kill, it waits for something else to die, then it feeds on a rotten corpse. Vultures have stomach acid so strong it can break down anthrax, botulism, and cholera without the bird getting sick. Why? Because they're designed to consume plague-ridden flesh. They're the cleanup crew for the dead. They're biological waste processors. And Yah says, do not eat the waste processor. Do not consume a creature whose entire function is to consume rot. The kite, another bird of prey, another hunter, another flesh eater. After his kind means all variations of kites fall under the same classification. If it's a kite, it's unclean. No exceptions. Here's what you need to understand. These birds serve a function in creation. Vultures need to exist to clean up dead bodies and prevent the spread of disease. Predatory birds need to exist to control populations of smaller animals. Yah designed them for a purpose, but that purpose is not to be your food. They're environmental services, not nutrition. Eating a vulture would be like eating a garbage disposal. Yeah, it serves a purpose in the system, but you don't eat it. You don't consume the thing that's designed to process waste. Cross-reference the book of Jasher, where it records that in the days before the flood, the earth was filled with violence, and the people were eating anything that moved. Clean, unclean, it didn't matter. They had no discernment, no boundaries, no classification system. And Yah looked at that shit and said enough. The corruption was so deep, the dietary abomination so widespread, that he had to reset the whole system with the flood. Jasher records that one of the primary sins of the pre-flood world was the eating of unclean flesh, not just occasionally, but as the norm. They turned Yah's creation into a feeding frenzy with zero regard for what he called clean and unclean, and he wiped them out for it. What does that tell you? That dietary law is not some minor footnote in Torah. It's not just health advice. It's tied to your covenant standing with the Most High. What you eat reflects whether you respect Yah's classifications or whether you think you know better. The pre-flood world said, we'll eat whatever we want. Yah said, no you won't, and drowned them. Don't make the same damn mistake. Every raven after his kind. Ravens are omnivores with a preference for carrion. They'll eat dead animals, garbage, insects, bird eggs, pretty much anything. They're opportunistic scavengers. They're not picky. If it's edible, they'll consume it. And that lack of discernment makes them unclean. The raven has no filter, no standards, no boundaries. It just consumes whatever is available. The raven shows up in scripture at a critical moment, when Nun-Ket, Noah, sent a bird out from the ark to see if the waters had receded. He sent a raven first. And what did the raven do? It flew back and forth, feeding on the corpses floating in the flood water. It didn't come back to the ark. It just circled, feeding on death. Then Nun-Ket sent a dove, a clean bird, and the dove came back because it found no place to land. It refused to settle on the contaminated earth. The raven, it was perfectly content feeding on the dead. That's the difference between clean and unclean. The clean bird has standards. It refuses to settle for contamination. The unclean bird has no standards. It'll feed on whatever is available, even if it's floating corpses in a worldwide graveyard. Which one are you? Are you the dove that refuses to compromise? Or are you the raven that's fine with feeding on death as long as it fills your belly? And the owl, and the nighthawk, and the cuckoo, and the hawk after his kind. Every single bird in this list is a nocturnal predator or a bird of prey. Owls hunt at night. Nighthawks hunt at night. Hawks hunt during the day. All of them are carnivores. All of them kill living prey. All of them eat flesh and blood. The pattern holds. Yah is not listing random birds. He's listing the killers and the scavengers. The owl is especially interesting because in heathen cultures, the owl is a symbol of wisdom. The Greeks worshipped Athena and made the owl her sacred animal. Mystery schools and secret societies use the owl as their emblem. The Bohemian Grove bastards literally worship a 40-foot owl statue. Why? Because the owl represents occult knowledge, hidden wisdom, the ability to see in darkness. And Yah says that shit is an abomination. The wisdom of the world is foolishness to the Most High. The serpent seed value what Yah calls unclean, and they reject what Yah calls holy. Every time you see an owl symbol in their architecture, their currency, their institutions, you're looking at a marker of rebellion. They're telling you, we embrace what Yah forbade. What does this mean for you? Stop romanticizing predators. Stop glorifying carnivores. Stop calling eagles majestic and owls wise when Yah calls them abominations. The world's value system is inverted. What they praise, Yah condemns. What they market as strength, Yah calls contamination. Get your discernment aligned with his classifications, not theirs. And the little owl, and the cormorant, and the great owl. 3 more birds. Little owl, great owl, both predators. The cormorant is a fish eater, a diving bird that hunts aquatic prey. All 3 are carnivores. All 3 consume flesh. All 3 accumulate toxins from their diet. All 3 are unclean. The cormorant is particularly nasty because it dives deep into the water to catch fish, meaning it's hunting in the lowest, darkest parts of the water where the most contaminated fish dwell. The fish that live near the bottom, the ones feeding on waste and decay, that's what the cormorant is eating. Then when you eat the cormorant, you're consuming a bird that consumed the most toxic fish in the water. It's contamination, stacked on contamination, stacked on contamination. Modern comparison, it's like downloading a file from a torrent site, and that file was uploaded from a compromised server, and that server was hacked through a phishing attack, and the phishing email came from a botnet of infected machines. By the time you download the file, you're getting malware that's passed through multiple layers of criminal activity. That's what eating unclean birds is like. You're consuming biological malware that passed through multiple layers of the death and decay food chain. And the swan, and the pelican, and the gear eagle. The swan is interesting because most people think of swans as beautiful, graceful, clean birds. But guess what? Swans are omnivores. They eat fish, insects, mollusks, and aquatic plants. They'll consume snails and other bottom-dwelling creatures. They're not pure herbivores. They've got flesh in their diet, which means they've got concentrated toxins in their tissue. Unclean. The pelican is a fish eater. It dives into the water, scoops up fish in its massive beak, and swallows them whole. Another carnivore, another predator, another accumulator of aquatic toxins. Unclean. The gear eagle, that's likely the Egyptian vulture or a similar scavenging bird. Another corpse eater, another creature that feeds on death. Unclean. You're starting to see the pattern now, right? It's not random. It's not arbitrary. Every bird on this list shares the same damn trait. They eat death. Either they kill for it or they scavenge it, but they all consume flesh, blood, carrion, or contaminated prey. And Yah says, do not become like them. Do not eat creatures whose nature is to feed on death. You are called to life, not death. And the stork, the heron after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. Stork and heron, both are wading birds that hunt in shallow water for fish, frogs, insects, and small animals. They're predators. They eat flesh. Unclean. The lapwing. Depending on translation, this could be the hoopoe, a bird that feeds on insects, especially the ones living in dung. Yeah, this bird literally pokes around in animal shit looking for bugs to eat. And Yah says, do not eat a bird that feeds in feces. I mean, do I really need to explain why? If you need an explanation for why you shouldn't eat something that spends its day digging through shit, you've got bigger problems than dietary law. The bat. This one throws people off because bats aren't technically birds, they're mammals. But Yah groups them with birds here because they fly. And bats are either insect eaters or blood drinkers, vampire bats. Either way, they're consuming flesh or blood, unclean. Now here's the historical thread you need to pull. In ancient Israel's history, there are multiple instances where Yah judged the people for eating unclean things. The book of Jasher records that during the wilderness wandering, some Israelites got tired of manna and started hunting and eating unclean birds against Moses' command. And Yah struck them with plague, not because he's petty, not because he's playing dietary police, but because eating unclean flesh is covenant violation. It's rebellion. It's saying, I don't care what you classified as abomination, I'm going to eat it anyway. And when you rebel against Yah's order, his order enforces itself through consequences. Now in part 4, we're diving into the creeping things, the land-dwelling creatures that move on their bellies and crawl through the dirt, and why Yah's contamination protocols for these bastards are even stricter than what we've seen so far. Part 4, the contamination cascade protocol. The real engineering question isn't just what you eat, it's what happens when death touches your world. Verse 30, more creepers on the list, and the ferret, and the chameleon, and the lizard, and the snail, and the mole. 5 more creatures, ferret, chameleon, lizard, snail, mole. Every single one of them moves low, at ground level or below ground level. These are not creatures that walk upright with dignity. These are creatures that crawl, slither, burrow. They live in the dirt. They navigate through contaminated environments where waste accumulates. The ferret. This is likely a reference to a gecko or similar reptile, not the domesticated pet. These creatures hunt insects, eat small prey, and live in crevices. They're low-dwelling scavengers. The chameleon, a lizard that changes colors to blend with this environment. Symbolically, this is the compromiser, the one who adapts to whatever culture surrounds him. He has no fixed identity, no stable appearance. He becomes whatever the world wants him to be to survive. That's spiritual uncleanness, having no covenant identity that stays constant regardless of external pressure. The Paleo-Hebrew root for change is het Lamed, pay. Het plus Lamed plus pay. To change is to speak from a position of separated authority. But when that change is constant and reactive, like the chameleon, it's not authority, it's compromise, it's fence-sitting, it's being double-minded. The lizard, another low-dwelling reptile, cold-blooded, moves on his belly or close to the ground, eats insects and small prey. In ancient Near Eastern symbolism, reptiles represented chaos, deception, the adversarial spirit. That's why the serpent in Eden was associated with reptilian imagery, not because it was a literal snake, but because reptiles represented the nature of rebellion and cunning. The snail, this creature, literally carries his house on its back and leaves a trail of slime everywhere it goes. Symbolically, this is the person who never plants roots, never commits to a place or a people. He's always ready to retreat into his shell, always ready to move when things get uncomfortable. And everywhere he goes, he leaves a trail of residue, broken relationships, half-finished commitments, contamination in his wake. The mole, this bastard lives underground. It never sees the light. It burrows through dirt, eating worms and grubs, completely disconnected from the world above. This is the person who lives in spiritual darkness. No revelation, no light, no connection to the truth that's above ground in plain sight. He's tunneling through life blind, consuming whatever he finds in the dirt, never lifting his head to see the sun. Modern tech comparison, these creatures are like background processes running in your system that you don't even know about. They're not the main applications. They're the hidden shit running in the background, consuming resources, slowing down performance, leaving traces in your system logs. The chameleon is like a process that changes its signature to avoid detection. The mole is like malware that burrows deep into system files where you can't see it. The snail is like a program that leaves temp files everywhere it runs, cluttering your storage. What does this mean for you? Don't be the chameleon who changes doctrine depending on what camp he's in this week. Don't be the snail who never commits and leaves contamination everywhere. Don't be the mole who lives in darkness, disconnected from the light of Torah. Walk upright. Live in the light. Have a fixed identity rooted in Yah's covenant. Stop crawling. Verse 31, the contamination transfer rule. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Whosoever doth touch them when they be dead shall be unclean until the even. Yah just summarized all the creeping things and issued a blanket contamination protocol. If you touch the dead body of any creeping thing, you are unclean until evening. Not permanently, not forever, until evening, which is sunset, when the day resets. The Paleo-Hebrew for evening is ayin resh bet. Ayin plus resh plus bet. Evening is when you see the head return to the house, the sun setting, the day cycle completing. It's a reset point, a system reboot. The contamination doesn't last forever. It lasts until the next cycle begins. This is quarantine protocol. In modern terms, if you come into contact with biological contamination, you don't just walk around spreading it. You isolate until the contamination period passes. You wash, you wait, then you clear to re-enter clean space. Engineering principle, this is exception handling with a tenere. In this case, contact with unclean material, it doesn't crash permanently. It enters a recovery state for a defined period, then resumes normal operation. The system has fault tolerance built in. Contamination is temporary if handled correctly. Ignore the protocol and the contamination spreads. Follow the protocol and the system recovers. The symbolic layer is massive. Touching death makes you unclean. Contact with corruption defiles. But the defilement is not permanent if you follow the cleansing ritual. Yah's teaching Israel, you will come into contact with uncleanness in this world. You're living in a fallen system. Contact is inevitable, but don't let that contact become permanent residence. Wash, separate, wait for the cycle to reset, then return to clean living. Here's the thread nobody pulls. When they be dead, the uncleanness transfers from the carcass, not the living creature. Death is the contaminating agent. A live mouse running through your camp? That's a nuisance, but it's not making you ceremonially unclean. A dead mouse that you touch? Now you've got a contamination problem. Why? Because death is the enemy. Death is what entered creation through sin. Death is the corruption that spreads and infects everything it touches. Cross-reference Romans chapter 6, verse 23. For the wages of sin is death. Death is the payment for transgression. It's the currency of the fallen world. And when you touch death, literally or symbolically, you become contaminated by what sin produces. That's why Yah instituted these protocols. He's training Israel to recognize that death is not normal. Death is not natural. Death is the enemy, and contact with it defiles. What does this mean for you today? Stop normalizing death. Stop consuming images of death. Entertainment featuring death. Music glorifying death. Every time you watch some violent movie where people get slaughtered for entertainment, you're touching death symbolically. Every time you listen to music that glorifies murder, drugs, and destruction, you're making contact with the culture of death. And that contact contaminates your spirit, even if you think it's just entertainment. Separate, wash, reset. Verse 32, contamination transfer to objects. And upon whatsoever any of them, when they are dead, doth fall, it shall be unclean, whether it be any vessel of wood, or raiment, or skin, or sack, whatsoever vessel it be, wherein any work is done, it must be put into water, and it shall be unclean until the even, so it shall be cleansed. Now the contamination protocol expands. It's not just about you touching the carcass. If the carcass falls on your stuff becomes unclean. Wood vessels, clothing, leather, sacks, any container used for work. If a dead creeping thing falls into it or on it, that object is now contaminated. The solution? Water. You put the contaminated object in water and it remains unclean until evening. After evening, after the day resets at sunset, the object is cleansed. The Paleo-Hebrew for water is mem, yod, mem. Mem plus yod plus mem. Water is chaos brought under the hand of work. It's a cleansing agent because it's a solvent. Water dissolves contaminants, washes away residue, carries impurities away from the surface. Engineering principle: water is a universal cleanser at the molecular level. It's a polar molecule. One end is slightly positive, one end is slightly negative. That polarity allows water to bind to both hydrophilic, water-loving, and hydrophobic, water-fearing substances and carry them away. When you wash something in water, you're using the molecular structure of water to break the bonds between contaminants and the surface you're cleaning. Yah designed water as a reset mechanism for contamination. You don't throw away the vessel just because it got contaminated. You cleanse it. You put it through the purification protocol. After the timeout period, it's restored to clean status. Modern comparison: this is like clearing cookies and cache in your web browser. Your browser accumulates data as you surf, some of it useful, some of it tracking garbage from sites you visited. You don't throw away the browser, you clear the cache. You flush the contaminated data, then the browser runs clean again. Or think of it like a quarantine folder, an antivirus software. When your system detects a potentially infected file, it doesn't immediately delete your whole hard drive. It isolates the file, runs a scan, attempts to clean it, and after a defined period, either restores it or permanently removes it. The contamination is managed, not just panicked over. Here's the symbolic layer. Your tools get contaminated by contact with death. Your work gets contaminated. Your clothing, what you wear as your external identity, gets contaminated. Even your storage containers, the things you use to hold resources, can become unclean. This is teaching Israel that contamination spreads. It doesn't stay isolated to the initial contact point. It transfers to everything connected to you. What does this mean practically? When you come into contact with unclean doctrine, unclean relationships, unclean environments, that contamination spreads to your tools. Your Bible gets contaminated when you read it through the lens of false teaching. Your prayer life gets contaminated when you're praying in agreement with lies. Your work gets contaminated when you're building on a corrupted foundation. You need to wash those tools in the water of the Word. You need to let them sit in truth until the contamination is purged. Notice Yah doesn't say burn the vessel. He says cleanse it. There's a difference between something that's corrupted and something that's contaminated. Corruption is internal. The thing itself is rotten. Contamination is external. Something unclean touched it, but the thing itself is still sound. A wooden bowl that a dead mouse fell into is not corrupt, it's contaminated. Wash it, it's fine. But a wooden bowl that was carved with idols and used in heathen worship, that's corrupted. You burn that shit. Learn the difference. Verse 33, the exception for pottery. In every earthen vessel, whereinto any of them falleth, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean, and ye shall break it. Here's the exception. If a dead creeping thing falls into an earthen vessel, a clay pot, a ceramic container, you don't wash it. You break it, destroy it completely. Why? Because earthen vessels are porous. Clay has microscopic holes. When contamination enters a porous material, it penetrates the surface. You can wash the outside, but the contamination is now inside the material itself. Water can't reach it. The defilement is now embedded at a level you cannot cleanse. The Paleo Hebrew for earthing is ket, resh, samek. Ket, fence, wall, plus resh, head, first, plus samek, support, thorn. Earthen material is the fence support at the head. It's structural, but it's also absorbent. It holds shape, but it also holds contamination when exposed. This is infection control at the engineering level. With non-porous materials, wood, leather, cloth, you can wash the surface and remove contamination because it didn't penetrate. But with porous materials, clay, pottery, unglazed ceramics, contamination soaks in. You can't see it. You can't scrub it out. It's absorbed into the matrix of the material. Modern comparison, this is like the difference between a solid-state drive and a magnetic tape archive. If an SSD gets corrupted, you can often low-level format it and restore it to factory state. The corruption was at the file system level, not embedded in the physical medium. But if a magnetic tape gets contaminated with mold or chemical exposure, the contamination penetrates the tape medium itself. You can't wash a magnetic tape and restore it. The physical substrate is ruined. You destroy it. Well, think about memory foam versus vinyl. Spill something on vinyl, wipe it off. Contamination stays on the surface. Spill something on memory foam, that shit soaks in. The contamination is now part of the foam structure. You can wash the surface all you want. The contamination is embedded. You throw it out. Yah's teaching Israel to recognize when contamination has gone surface level versus structural. Some things can be cleansed. Other things must be destroyed because the contamination is now part of the material itself. Symbolic application. When false doctrine penetrates your core beliefs, you can't just wash off the contamination with a few correct teachings. The lie is now embedded in your theological matrix. You have to break that belief structure completely and rebuild from scratch. That's what repentance means. Not tweaking your behavior, but shattering the corrupted foundation and starting over. When unclean relationships penetrate your identity, you can't just distance yourself a little and call it fixed. The contamination is now part of how you see yourself. You have to break that soul tie completely, destroy the vessel, build a new one. When generational curses penetrate your bloodline, you can't just pray a quick prayer and move on. The contamination is structural. It passed down through your ancestry and is now in your children. You need the blood of Yad, Hey, Wah, Shin, Ayin to break that curse at the root, shattering the earthen vessel of the old covenant and forming you into a new creation. This verse is why you can't always fix people. Some people are porous. They absorb every lie, every false doctrine, every corrupt influence that comes near them. You try to teach them truth, but the contamination is so deep, so embedded in their belief structure that washing doesn't work. They need to be broken and remade. That's a work only Yah can do. Verse 34, contaminated food and drink. Of all meat which may be eaten, that on which such water cometh shall be unclean, and all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean. Now it gets specific. If you have food or drink in a contaminated vessel, that food and drink become unclean. Even if the food itself was clean, contact with the contaminated container transfers the uncleanness. Notice the phrase, such water. This is water that touched the contamination. It's not pure water used for cleansing, it's contaminated water. If contaminated water touches your food is now unclean. If you drink from a vessel that held a dead, creeping thing, you're consuming uncleanness, even if the liquid itself looks fine. This is cross-contamination at the molecular level. You can't see the contamination, but it's present. One drop of contaminated water in a pot of clean water makes the whole pot contaminated. That's not Yah being nitpicky, that's biology. Bacteria, parasites, toxins, they multiply. One contaminated drop becomes a million contaminated drops, given time and the right conditions. Engineering principle? This is data corruption propagating through a system. If you have a clean data set and you introduce one corrupted record, that corrupted record can taint the entire data set if your system uses that record in calculations, joins, or aggregations. You have to quarantine the corrupted record, remove it from the data set, and validate every calculation that touched it. Otherwise, the corruption spreads through every query and report generated from that data. Or think about network security. If one device on your network is infected with malware, and that device communicates with other devices on the network, the malware spreads. One compromised node can infect the entire network if you don't isolate it immediately. That's why network administrators implement segmentation, keeping potentially contaminated traffic separated from clean traffic. Symbolically, this is about discernment and what you consume. It's not just about whether the teaching itself is true, it's about whether the source is clean. You can have a true statement coming from a contaminated source, and the contamination transfers. That's why you can't just listen to anybody who quotes scripture. If they're preaching truth mixed with lies, the contamination from the lies spreads to the truth. You end up consuming both, and your belief system becomes infected. This is why Paul warned about false apostles in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. They come speaking some truth, but the source is contaminated. They have a hidden agenda, a corrupt motive, a lying spirit, and even though they quote scripture accurately in places, the contamination from their false teachings spreads to everything they say. You can't consume their teachings selectively and expect to stay clean. The vessel is unclean. Therefore, everything that comes out of it is unclean. What does this mean for you? Stop trying to extract truth from contaminated sources. Well, he's wrong about this, but he's right about that. So I'll just listen to the parts I agree with. Wrong. The vessel is unclean. Everything that comes out of it is tainted. Find a clean source or don't consume at all. Verse 35. Permanent contamination of structures. And everything whereupon any part of their carcass falleth shall be unclean, whether it be earthen or ranges for pots. They shall be broken down, for they are unclean, and shall be unclean unto you. Now we're at the structural level. If a dead creeping thing falls on your oven or your cooking range, you don't wash it. You break it down, destroy it completely. These are not temporary use vessels. These are permanent structures used for preparing food. And if they become contaminated, they stay unclean. Why? Because these structures are made of stone, brick, clay, porous materials heated to high temperatures. When contamination touches them, especially when they're hot, the contamination doesn't just sit on the surface, it bonds to the material. Heat accelerates the absorption process. The contamination becomes part of the structure. The Paleo-Hebrew for oven is Ta-nun wa resh. Ta plus nun plus wa plus resh. An oven is where the covenant mark continues to connect the head. It's a formative structure where raw ingredients are transformed by fire into finished food. When that structure becomes unclean, the transformation process itself is compromised. Everything you cook in that oven will be contaminated. This is infrastructure corruption. It's not just a tool that got dirty, it's the system that produces your resources. When your production system is compromised, you can't just patch it. You have to tear it down and rebuild. Modern comparison, think about a manufacturing plant that gets contaminated with a hazardous chemical. You can't just hose down the equipment and resume production. Depending on the level of contamination, you might have to demolish entire sections of the facility and rebuild with new equipment. The contamination has penetrated the production infrastructure to a degree that cleaning is insufficient. Replacement is the only option. Or think about a software code base that's been compromised by a persistent backdoor. You can patch the known vulnerabilities, but if the attacker had root access for an extended period, you don't know what else they embedded. The entire code base is suspect. Best practice, burn the repo. Start from the last known clean backup before the compromise. Rebuild. Don't trust anything that existed during the contamination period. Symbolically, this is about institutions and systems that become corrupted. When a church becomes doctrinally compromised, when the leadership starts preaching heresy from the pulpit, you don't just replace the pastor and keep attending. The structure is contaminated. The institution has been corrupted at a foundational level. You tear it down, you leave, you build something new on clean ground. When a denomination becomes apostate, when they officially endorse doctrines that contradict scripture, you don't just join a different congregation within that denomination. The denominational structure is unclean. Everything produced within that system is contaminated. You separate completely. When a government becomes systematically corrupt, when the laws themselves are designed to oppress Yah's people, you don't just vote for better politicians within that system. The system itself is unclean. You don't reform it. You break it down and build something new. That's what the kingdom of Yah will do when Yad-Heh Waw Shin Ayin returns. He's not reforming Babylon's system. He's destroying it completely and establishing a new governmental structure. This verse is teaching Israel some things are beyond repair. Recognize when contamination has reached the infrastructure level. Stop trying to patch a fundamentally broken system. Break it down. Start over. Verse 36, the exception for water sources. Nevertheless, a fountain or pit wherein there is plenty of water shall be clean, but that which touches their carcass shall be unclean. Here's a fascinating exception. A fountain or a pit with abundant water stays clean even if a carcass falls into it. Why? Because the volume of clean water is so massive compared to the contamination that the contamination is diluted to insignificance. The moving water of a fountain or the sheer quantity of water in a pit means the contamination doesn't concentrate, it disperses. But, and this is critical, whatever directly touches the carcass is still unclean. If you reach into the fountain and pull out the dead mouse, your hand is unclean, even though the fountain itself remains clean. The Paleo Hebrew for fountain is mem, ayin, yud, nun. Mem plus ayin plus yud plus nun. A fountain is water you see working to continue the seed. It's a visible source that keeps flowing. It's not stagnant. It's renewing constantly. That constant renewal prevents contamination from accumulating. Engineering principle. This is about flow rate versus contamination load. In water treatment systems, you have a concept called hydraulic retention time. How long water stays in a treatment basin before moving on. If the flow rate is high and the volume is large, contaminants don't have time to accumulate to dangerous concentrations. They're constantly being diluted and flushed out. Same principle in network security. If you have a high traffic network with massive bandwidth and active monitoring, a single infected packet doesn't bring down the whole system. The traffic volume is so large that the infected packet is statistically insignificant. But if you have a low traffic network and that same infected packet arrives, it represents a much higher percentage of your total traffic and poses a greater threat. Symbolically, this is about spiritual saturation. When you are so immersed in the Word, so filled with Torah, so surrounded by truth, that your spirit is like a fountain with abundant water. Occasional exposure to contamination doesn't defile you. The volume of truth in your system dilutes the lie before it can take root. But if your spiritual reservoir is shallow, if you barely read scripture, barely pray, barely meditate on Torah, then even a small exposure to false doctrine can contaminate you significantly. You don't have enough clean water to dilute it. The lie becomes a large percentage of your total input, and it infects your belief system. This is why Yah commands Israel to meditate on his law day and night. Not once a week, not when you feel like it, day and night. Keep the fountain flowing, keep the reservoir full. That way, when contamination inevitably comes near you, it gets diluted in the abundance of truth you're already carrying. But notice, even in a clean fountain, if you touch the carcass, you're unclean. Proximity to truth doesn't make you immune to contamination if you directly engage with death. You can be in a good church, surrounded by solid teachers, immersed in truth. But if you reach into the filth and grab hold of sin, you are contaminated, even though the environment around you stays clean. Verses 37 and 38, the seed protocol. And if any part of their carcass fall upon any sowing seed which is to be sown, it shall be clean. But if any water be put upon the seed, and any part of their carcass fall thereon, it shall be unclean unto you. This is brilliant agricultural engineering. Dry seed that gets contaminated stays clean, but wet seed that gets contaminated becomes unclean. Why? Because dry seed is dormant. Its biological processes are suspended. It's not absorbing. It's not metabolizing. It's in stasis. If a carcass falls on dry seed, the contamination sits on the surface. You can brush it off. The seed itself is not penetrated. But wet seed is activated. Once you add water, germination begins. The seed coat softens. The embryo starts absorbing nutrients and moisture. The biological systems turn on. If contamination is present when the seed is wet, the seed absorbs the contamination along with the water. The uncleanness becomes internal to the seed. You can't separate it anymore. The Paleo-Hebrew for seed is Zayin, Resh, Ayin. Zayin plus Resh plus Ayin. Seed is the weapon at the head that brings sight. It's the beginning point of the next generation. If the seed is contaminated, the entire next generation is contaminated. This is why the purity of the seed is critical. Engineering principle. This is about state transitions and vulnerability windows. A system in standby mode is more resistant to contamination than a system in active mode. When you activate a system, when you add water to the seed, when you boot up the computer, when you open the port for communication, you create a vulnerability window. During that window, contamination can enter the system. In cybersecurity, this is called attack surface. A system that's powered off has zero attack surface. Nobody can hack it remotely. But the moment you power it on and connect it to a network, the attack surface expands. Every open port, every running service, every active process is a potential entry point for malware. Same with the seed. Dry seed has minimal attack surface. Wet seed has maximum attack surface. The biological processes are active, which means contamination can be absorbed and integrated into the developing organism. Symbolically, this is teaching Israel about when you are most vulnerable to corruption. When you're in a dormant state spiritually, not actively growing, not seeking new revelation, just maintaining, you're more resistant to false doctrine. A lie can sit on the surface of your understanding and you can brush it off without it penetrating. But when you're in growth mode, actively seeking, actively learning, actively hungry for knowledge, you're more vulnerable. If contamination is present during that growth phase, you absorb it along with the truth. It becomes part of your developing belief system. You can't separate it later without uprooting a whole plant. That's why teachers have a stricter judgment. They're working with activated seed, people who are growing, learning, absorbing. If the teacher introduces contamination during that vulnerable window, the contamination gets embedded in the student's foundation. The student builds their entire theology on a corrupted base, and they don't even know it. This is also why young believers are prime targets for false teachers. They're spiritually wet. They're freshly activated. They're absorbing everything. If a false teacher gets to them during that window, the contamination goes deep. It's much harder to root out later. What's the solution? Guard the growth phase. When you're in a season of rapid spiritual growth, be extra careful about your sources. Don't just consume everything. Filter your input. Make sure the environment is clean before you start absorbing. Because once the contamination gets in during activation, it becomes part of your structure. Now in part 5, we're wrapping this whole chapter with the theological capstone. Yah reveals why he gave these laws, what they say about his nature, and what they demand from Israel as a holy people. Part 5, the final verdict on your flesh. The blueprint for your biological survival is written in the very code of your DNA. And when you ignore the engineer's manual, you aren't just breaking a rule, you're crashing your own system. We are closing the file on Leviticus chapter 11, moving from the contamination of the seed to the final sanctification of the vessel. Leviticus 11:39. And if any beast of which ye may eat die, he that toucheth the carcass thereof shall be unclean until the even. Yah is establishing a protocol for the clean beast, the ones designated for the shadow sacrificial system, showing that even a clean animal becomes a source of contamination the moment life leaves the vessel. The word for die here is mot, spelled mem, wa, ta in Paleo Hebrew. Mem plus wa plus ta. Death is the chaos that nails the mark of the covenant shut. It is the termination of the biological program. When a clean beast like an ox or a sheep dies on its own, without the ritual shedding of blood for atonement, it becomes a biohazard. Yah is teaching you that death itself is the ultimate impurity. Even if the animal was on the approved list for the shadow era, its carcass is the vessel of decay. The engineer principle here is system state transition. In any high-level machine, there is a massive difference between a live state and a dead state. A live machine has electrical current, data flow, and thermal regulation. A dead machine is just a pile of oxidizing metal and leaking chemicals. Yah is telling Israel that the moment the spirit of life, the power source, is disconnected, the hardware begins to putrefy. Touching that hardware transfers the error code of death to your own system. You become unclean until the even, a mandatory quarantine period. This destroys the false doctrine that holiness is just an internal feeling. No, holiness is technical. It's about frequency and biological purity. If you touch a dead thing, your frequency drops. You are out of alignment with the living Elohim, God, until the sun resets the day cycle. This is why you feel like shit when you hang around dead energy, dead people, and dead doctrines. You are picking up their contamination. Leviticus 11:40. And he that eateth of the carcass of it shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the even. He also that beareth the carcass of it shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the even. Look at the escalation of the protocol. If you don't just touch it, but you actually eat it, you consume the dead flesh of an animal that died of natural causes, which is usually disease or old age. The contamination is internal. You have to wash your clothes, which represents your external interface, and you remain unclean. The word for wash is kalbas, spelled kaf bet samek. Kaf, palm/open, plus bet, house/tent, plus samek, support/prop. You are opening the house of your garments to the support of the water to scrub away the residue of death. Yah is showing you that consumption is the deepest form of networking. When you eat, you are logging in to the data of that animal. If that animal died of a plague, you just downloaded that virus into your own motherboard. Technically, this is input validation. If you feed a computer corrupted data, the processor starts throwing errors. If you feed your body, Yah's most complex machine, the rotting tissue of a dead beast, you are forcing your liver and kidneys to process concentrated toxins. The washing of clothes is a physical act that mirrors a system flush. Throughout the KJV, Yah emphasizes that we are to be a clean people. In the book of Ezekiel, he rants about the priests who don't teach the difference between the clean and the unclean. Why? Because if you can't discern what goes into your mouth, you damn sure won't discern what goes into your mind. You've got Negroes today eating soul food that is nothing but a plate of death, then wondering why they can't hear from the Most High. Your signal is jammed by the putrefaction in your gut. You are carrying the carcass of your own destruction. Leviticus 11:41. And every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth shall be an abomination. It shall not be eaten. Yah returns to the creeping things to put a final, bloody exclamation point on the matter. The word for creeping thing is shiretz, spelled shin resh sade. Shin, teeth/consume, plus resh, head/first, plus sade, hook/trail. It is a creature that consumes the trail from the head. It stays low, connected to the dirt. Yah says it is an abomination. Shin kof sade. Shin, consume, plus kof, horizon/behind, plus sade, hook. An abomination is a perversion that hooks you from behind and consumes your righteousness. These low-level organisms are the cleanup crew of the earth. They are engineered to recycle waste. They are the maggots, the worms, the beetles. They are the garbage collectors in the programming of the earth. In software engineering, a garbage collector is a process that goes through the memory and deletes objects that are no longer being used. It's a necessary function, but you don't eat the garbage collector. If you stop the garbage collector and try to integrate it into your main application code, the whole system hangs. Yah is saying these creatures are part of the earth's maintenance subroutine. They are designed to live in the filth, so you don't have to. When you eat them, you are interfering with the earth's hardware and poisoning your own software. This destroys the lie of evolution that says we all came from the same primordial soup. No, Yah engineered distinct cates. The creeping thing has its place in the dirt. Israel has its place in the light. When you eat like a beast, you start thinking like a beast. You lose your upright status. You become a low-level crawler, obsessed with the flesh and the dirt, unable to look up at the firmament and see the engineer's glory. Leviticus 11:42. Whatsoever goeth upon the belly, and whatsoever goeth upon all four, or whatsoever hath more feet, among all creeping things that creep upon the earth, them ye shall not eat, for they are an abomination. Yah is getting graphic now. He's talking about the snakes, the centipedes, the multi-legged freaks of the dirt. Goeth upon the belly. That is the mark of the serpent man's curse. It represents the lowest possible frequency. The word for belly is Galkan, spelled Gimel, Ket, Wal, Nun. Gimel, foot/walk, plus Ket, fence/private, plus Wal, nail, plus Nun, seed. It literally means the walking fence of the seed. These creatures have no feet to lift them up. Their very walking is a private connection to the earth. They are the ultimate earthbound entities. Yah says do not eat them. Why? Because they are the ultimate scavengers. A centipede with more feet is just a more efficient waste processor. Engineering-wise, this is about low burn and elevation. A machine that sits directly in the mud will rust and fail 10 times faster than a machine lifted on a chassis. Yah engineered the clean beast to be lifted up on hooves. He engineered you to walk upright on 2 feet. He wants your sensitive components away from the ground level static and contamination. When you eat things that go upon the belly, you are consuming the frequency of the curse. You are eating the very archetype of the adversary. This connects to Genesis chapter 3, where the serpent was told he would go on his belly and eat dust. Dust is the debris of death. If you eat the dust eater, you are eating death twice removed. It's a biological feedback loop of pure shit. You are filling your temple with the hardware of the enemy. Stop being a damn scavenger. You are supposed to be the head, not the tail. So why are you eating the things that live at the tail end of the food chain? Leviticus 11:43. Ye shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing that creepeth, neither shall ye make yourselves unclean with them, that ye shall be defiled thereby. This is the security warning. Yah is telling you that you have the power to make yourselves abominable. This destroys the free will lie because it shows that your choices are simply inputs into a predefined system of consequences. If you input abomination, the output is defilement. The system is fixed. The word for defiled is ta-meh, spelled ta-mem-aleph. Ta plus mem plus aleph. Defilement is when the strength of chaos marks your soul. It is a system corruption event. When you eat these things, you aren't just having a cheat meal. You are altering your biological and spiritual signature. You are making yourselves compatible with the darkness. Technically, this is permissions and access control. In a secure network, you don't let unauthenticated users or malicious scripts run on the server. If you do, the server becomes defiled. It is no longer a trusted environment. Yah designed the Israelite body to be a trusted environment for his spirit. When you fill that environment with the DNA of scavengers and bottom feeders, you are installing a back door for the heathen spirits to enter. You wonder why our people are so easily deceived? Why they follow every wind of doctrine and every lying-ass preacher? It's because their firewall is down. They've made themselves abominable with their diet, and now their discernment algorithm is broken. You can't see the truth when your eyes are clouded by the mucus and parasites of a swine-based diet. You are a compromised machine, and the Most High will not log in to a defiled terminal. Leviticus 11:44. For I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore sanctify yourselves, and ye shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall ye defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Here is the root authority declaration. For I am Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, Yah, your Elohim, God. This is the admin password. He is the one who wrote the code, so he is the one who sets the standards. Sanctify yourselves. The word is Kardas, spelled Kaf, Dalet, Shin. Kaf, horizon/behind, plus Dalet, door, plus Shin, teeth/consume. To sanctify is to consume the door to what is behind, to set yourself apart, to enter a restricted area. Be holy, for I am holy. The word holy is Ka, Doshe. It means set apart. It is a dedicated system. Yah is a dedicated system. He does not mix with filth. Therefore, his people must be a dedicated system. This is hardware isolation. In high security computing, you have air-gapped systems that are never connected to the public internet. They are holy, set apart, so they cannot be hacked. Yah is telling Israel, I am an air-gapped Elohim. I don't mix with the chaos of the nations. If you want to interface with me, you have to be air-gapped too. You cannot be one with the world and one with Yah at the same time. That is a logic error. You are either a dedicated terminal for the Most High, or you are a public kiosk for the heathen. There is no middle ground. This destroys the Trinity bullshit because it shows Yah is one singular, set-apart authority. He doesn't have a committee. He doesn't have a Godhead of three. He is the Holy One, and he demands a holy people. If you are still eating like the world, dressing like the world, and thinking like the world, you are not holy. You are just a heathen in a head wrap. Sanctify your damn self. Clean out your system files and get back to the original specifications. Leviticus 11:45. For I am the Lord that bringeth you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. Yah is reminding you of the system migration. He brought you out of Mitzrayim, Egypt, the land of double distress and narrow places. He brought you up. He elevated your frequency. Egypt was the land of abomination, where they worshiped the very creeping things Yah told you to avoid. They worshiped the beetle, scarab, the crocodile, the cat. They were down in the dirt with their theology. Yah pulled you out of that low-level environment to be your Elohim. He upgraded your operating system from slave to son. This is data migration and porting. When you move data from an old, corrupted legacy system, Egypt, to a new, high-performance server, the Covenant, you have to leave the old, corrupted files behind. You can't port the Egyptian diet into the Israelite covenant. It causes compatibility issues. Yah is saying, I didn't rescue your ass from Pharaoh just so you could keep eating like a slave. Being holy is the requirement for staying on a new server. If you keep running Egypt.exe, you will eventually crash and burn right back in the wilderness. This aligns with the KJV, where Yah says he is a jealous God. He is jealous of his system integrity. He won't allow foreign code to stay in his chosen nation. You want to be a part of the Exodus? Then you better leave the shrimp scampi and the pork chops in the land of your captivity. You are a new build. Start acting like it. Leviticus 11:46. This is the law of the beast, and of the fowl, and of every living creature that moveth in the waters, and of every creature that creepeth upon the earth. This is the documentation summary. Yah is closing the technical manual for this chapter. The word law is Torah, spelled Ta, Wa, Resh, Hay. Ta plus Wa plus Resh plus Hay. Torah is the mark that nails the head to what is beheld. It is the instruction set. It covers the beast, the fowl, the waters, and the creeping things. Yah has given you a full system overview. He has mapped out the entire biological network of the earth and told you how to interface with it. Technically, this is the API documentation. An API tells you exactly how one system can talk to another. Yah has given you the API for creation. He's saying, if you want to interface with the birds, here are the parameters. If you want to interface with the fish, here is the protocol. He is the master engineer who built the whole damn simulation, and he's handing you the README file. This destroys the no-law doctrine of these grace-only punks. If there is no law, there is no system. A computer without an instruction set is just a brick. A nation without Torah is just a mob. Yah didn't give these laws to burden you, he gave them to optimize you. He wants you running at peak performance. He wants your uptime to be 100%. But you're out here overclocking your heart with grease and blue screening your brain with toxins, then crying to Yah to fix it. He already told you how to keep it from breaking. Read the damn manual. Leviticus 11:47. To make a difference between the unclean and the clean, and between the beast that may be eaten and the beast that may not be eaten. This is the final objective. The whole point of Leviticus 11 is to make a difference. The word is badal, spelled Bet Dalet Lamed. Bet, house, plus Dalet, door, plus Lamed, authority. To make a difference is to place a door of authority in the house. It is discrimination. It is separation. Yah is a discriminatory Elohim. He does not believe in equality between clean and unclean. He does not believe in inclusion of abominations. He demands a binary distinction, 0 or 1, clean or unclean, life or death. This is signal to noise ratio. In communications engineering, you have to separate the signal, the message, from the noise, to static or interference. If you can't make a difference between the two, the message is lost. Israel is the signal in this world. The nations and their abominations are the noise. If you mix with them, if you eat like them, if you live like them, the signal is lost. You become indistinguishable from the static. Yah is calling for high fidelity Israel. He wants a pure stream of data. This connects to the book of Malachi, where Yah says, "Then shall you return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth God and him that serveth him not." Discrimination is a divine attribute. If you can't tell the difference between a lamb and a pig, you are spiritually blind. You are a malfunctioning sensor. The difference is what makes you Israel. The difference is your competitive advantage. The serpent seed wants to blur the lines. They want gender neutrality, religious pluralism, and dietary freedom. They want to merge the categories so they can hack the system. But Yah says, break the connection. Keep the difference sharp. Keep the boundary secure. Your life depends on your ability to discriminate between what brings life and what brings death. Now listen to me, Israel. We have walked through the biological blueprint of Leviticus 11. We have seen the engineering of the hoof, the algorithm of the fin, and the contamination of the carcass. This isn't just Old Testament history. This is current system status. You are a vessel of honor being filled with garbage. You are a prince eating like a peasant. And the judgment for this rejection of truth is already manifest in our people. Look at our neighborhoods. Look at the dialysis clinics on every corner. Look at the cancer wards filled with our mothers and fathers. That is the wrath of the broken law eating you alive from the inside out. You are abominable in your own flesh, and you wonder why the shield of Yah has departed from us. He will not protect a defiled temple. The repentance today is not just a prayer. It is a system purge. You need to go to your kitchen terminal and delete the abominations. Throw out the swine seed. Flush the shellfish filth. Stop touching the dead and start walking with the living. You need to reboot your body to the Genesis 1:29 factory settings. Return to the plant-based power that Yah gave us in Eden before the shadow system of death ever began. You are covenant hardware. Stop running heathen software. I am calling for the remnant who will sanctify themselves. I am calling for the engineers of righteousness who will make a difference in their own homes. If you won't clean the vessel, you can't carry the spirit. It's that simple. The final sacrifice has been made. Yud-Hey-Wah Shin Ayin has fulfilled the shadow. The temple service is over, but the temple body remains. Glorify Yah in your biological hardware. Thank you for tuning in to this 5-part investigation into the menu from Hell's Kitchen. I hope your cache is cleared and your signal is strong. Share this broadcast with every sleeping Israelite who is still feeding the beast. We are waking up, we are cleaning up, and we are taking back dominion. Next time on Yah First Ministries, we're going to dig into the mysteries of Leviticus 12. You don't want to miss it. This is Brother Bet Shadi Lamed Aleph Lamed, signing off from the control room of truth. Keep your fins in the water, your hoods on the rock, and your temple holy. Yah first, always. Peace.
Mm-hmm.